All right. As I said, welcome everybody. I'm Dr. John Loehr with the Science Olympiad National Office, and I'm hoping tonight to share with you some information about fundraising. And but before we get started into the details of the meeting, want to get some of the information and kind of questions out of the way. You should have heard when you came in that the session is being recorded. Right. Once we get a chance to process it, make sure everything's okay, we'll send you a link to it probably later this week. It's also going to be posted on Science Olympiad TV, our YouTube channel. So if you can't find the link or the link gets lost in your email, you can always go to Science Olympiad TV and you're going to find it there. During the session, because we got all the mics and cameras and stuff shut off, I would ask that you use the Q&A feature to ask your questions. And you can find the Q&A feature in the Zoom toolbar or the control bar. If it's not readily apparent, it's going to be under the three dots that say more. But if you put your questions there, I'm going to try and do my best to answer them, right? And my plan is to pause along the way to see what kind of questions have been asked, and then we'll tackle them. And then if there's time at the end, we'll go through anything that's kind of left and outstanding. Should you have a problem, please go ahead and put something in the chat. You're only going to be sending stuff towards me, but it's incredibly helpful. Like you're worried about sound quality or something like that, you can let me know something's wrong. So please don't hesitate to send me a message in the chat. I will do a good job trying to check that and keep an eye on that as we go through this session. Right. So what I'm hoping to do today was to tackle the topic of fundraising and doing it in such a way that we offer you a couple of possible fundraising strategies and talk about them, the pros, the cons, point out some things you need to consider that may not be all that transparent. We'll talk about some of the, and to do that, we're going to talk about some basics around fundraising and some things that we know. And then there's kind of four big buckets I was hoping to tackle. We're going to talk about getting donations. We're going to talk about fundraising through selling things. We're going to talk about fundraising through events. And we're going to talk about fundraising through raffles. And my hope is I want to give you a big picture kind of perspective on that approach. And then I have for each one a very specific example that we'll get into the details. All right. And then, as I said, we're going to be tackling questions. And just by way of background, so you understand, I've been fundraising now for the better part of my career. So in terms of grad school, it was working in research. It was working on grants, submissions. As a classroom teacher, I was trying to fundraise for my school, for my classroom, for my sports teams. I've coached a number of sports teams for both my boys and have done fundraising through that. I've done fundraising here with Science Olympiad, and I've also done fundraising through a lot of my work in the community. So I have some background in the area, but by no means am I an expert. So what you're going to be getting is sort of my perspective and my tips that hopefully you're going to take away some stuff you can use. All right. So to get started and kind of have add some fun to the day, I want to ask you, what's your favorite Thanksgiving food? And if you don't happen to celebrate the American tradition of Thanksgiving or the Canadian tradition, you know, what do you do for Thanksgiving? So if you bear with me, I'm going to launch the poll. So that should be open. What's your favorite Thanksgiving food? And if you have something otherwise, right, go ahead and throw it in the chat. If you would, if there's some other traditional dish or something that I missed that you absolutely love. And by recognition, this is kind of the stuff that's usually on my table when I gather with my family and friends for the holidays. All right, anybody else? All right, go ahead and show you the results. All right. So out of it, mashed potatoes kind of came out on top, which isn't totally surprising. I think the mashed potatoes can be some of the best. What I guess I forgot to put on there. Should have thought about sweet potatoes. I'm not a big fan of sweet potatoes, but I do know a lot of people are in the chat. And I apologize. I'm hoping I'm getting this right. Nisha Thant, I hope I got that close to correct, throws out baked mac and cheese. And I totally forgot about, and we don't often have mac and cheese. We're usually our starches are going to be the potatoes, both the sweet potatoes and the mashed potatoes, as well as if you've never had the green bean casserole, it's an acquired taste, but I never really appreciated it as a kid, but it was my grandmother's favorite, and nowadays it's mine as well, a lot of times. So thank you guys for that. All right, let's get into this. And so let's start talk about how do you get started with fundraising? And I think the most important thing is right from the get-go, right? You need to accept that I want to say nobody likes fundraising. Then that's not totally true, because there are people that specialize in it, right? People that do development, people that do advancement work are really good at it, and really understand what they're doing. But I think for a lot of us, it's just a necessary evil, right? It's something we have to do. And and there's a couple of challenges that brings to us, right? We have to do it, but that means it's going to take away from our task at hand. So in this particular case, we're talking about, preparing for Science Olympiad tournaments and working with kids and getting excited about science. Then if you're going to fundraise, we think, it generally takes a group of people to do it, but, there's that recognition that, okay, most people don't like doing it. They don't like asking questions for money, or they don't like asking about money. They don't know how to phrase the question. They don't know who to ask. They don't know the right amount to ask for, right? So there's a lot of messiness to it that turns people off. And then the other thing that we have going on here is that while, again, it's a necessary evil and people understand that it has to happen, and let's be honest, people can be incredibly generous. The problem is, there's a lot of things asking for fundraising. I absolutely cringe with my boys. Are both in high school, and each of them plays 2 sports, right? Plus the school, right? There's usually at any given time, we got 3 or 4 fundraisers going on that they're looking for people to donate to, or looking for people to make contributions for. So people get asked a lot, and it makes it tricky. But accepting the fact that we have to do it, I think the biggest thing you can do, especially as an outside fundraiser with your school, is make sure you understand the fundraising rules. Every school is going to have rules in place around how you fundraise, what you can fundraise for, when they can happen, who needs to approve them, who needs to handle the money. And whatever you do, you want to make sure you stay compliant with those rules. And it just, because if you don't, it gets awkward. And you can really create some tension between the school and the people doing the fundraising. The other big thing you need to understand is, what role can the teacher and coach play? So, for example, I was a building principal prior to coming here to Science Olympiad, and one of the things our school system put in place was teachers never handled money. They didn't handle money for field trips. They didn't handle money for book orders. They didn't handle money for fundraising, right? Any of those things, teachers never touched the money. It was always being coordinated through the clerk that I had in our school office. Well, unfortunately, I had a teacher that never bothered to check, and he decided he was going to do a fundraiser for his girls' soccer team. And they decided they were going to sell T-shirts. He collected all the money. So it made things awkward. It wasn't an approved fundraiser. He wasn't supposed to be handling the money. There was a lot of money. I mean, a lot of cash and checks and things sitting around in the school, unsecured. So make sure you understand like what role people can play and what the expectations are. And then I will tell you, there are times that you're going to run into barriers that may not make it easy to fundraise. So, for example, one of the schools my boys attended, there was a foundation created, and the foundation was responsible for all fundraisers at the school. Well, the foundation decided to deal with this issue with too many people being asked to fundraise or being asked for donations. They were only going to have one major fundraiser. The problem was, if you didn't sign up and let them know you needed to fundraise before they did their major fundraiser, you were cut off from the proceeds. So we had to come up with a workaround, because our ask came and our need came after the fundraiser was set up and already running. But you got to do it in such a way that you don't want to get the coach in trouble. You don't want to harm your relationship with the school. So you got to think about, how do you do with the workarounds and how do you approach this? And then definitely you want to have a plan for handling the money. You want to be transparent. You want everyone to know in the organization who's handling the money, what the plan for it is. So why essentially are you fundraising, right? And then if you have to collect it and you have to turn it in, try to make sure you keep it as close to the team as possible. And I go back to the foundation example, right? So if you participate in their fundraiser, it went into their foundation pot. Well, if you didn't get your request in or you didn't get your expenditure in before the money went away, you could be left out, even though you participated in their fundraiser. And it was notorious that there was a group that did an event, and every year their budget was off. So they always ended up taking more money out of the fundraising pot that we all contributed to than they effectively were entitled to. So as you look at it and you understand the rules and you understand the things about this, in your setup, try and keep the money close to the team. All right. Try and keep it where you guys can control it as much as possible. Would be my big piece of advice from some hard learned experience. All right. Now we got kind of that out of the way. You're going to be asked a question. All right. So what kind of fundraiser? Right. Well, clearly we've talked about something that makes sure you match the school guidelines. So what type of fundraiser? What are you allowed to do? When can you do it? How do you need to handle the money? The other questions you should be asking yourself about what you should do is, right, figure out what your need is for the year, right? Try and figure out what you're at. Like, how much do you really need to have on hand? Because back to the earlier point about like everybody's fundraising, you want to try and set a target, and you want to like base your expectations off of raising enough to cover you for whatever your expected year is, right? Ideally, you want to make sure whatever you're doing is somewhat low cost to you guys, right? So that you're not having to put a ton of money out up front that then you need to cover and reimburse people for and deal with after you get the fundraiser done. Back to the piece on the timing, right? And the fact that most people don't like doing it, and there's just a bunch of stuff going on, right? You want it to be as simple and easy to implement as you possibly can, right? So start with simple and easy things. And last but not least, right? Because, and we kind of mentioned this, with all the things going on, you want to try, I would encourage you to try and make it unique, right? Make it something that most people, it's interesting, people would enjoy it. It's something different. So at this point, I want to just pause and see if there are any background questions, anything on this that we need to touch on before I start breaking some of these ideas down, some of these fundraising approaches down? All right. If something comes to you, don't feel free, throw it in the Q&A, and I'll stop again. Oh, okay. All right. Parakash, I'm gonna get to that one in a second. He's got a question here about um, the about kind of reaching out and looking for a donation from a corporation. And I will talk to you about that in 1 second, because I'm going to actually, I think I covered donations here in like one more slide. So, I got a bunch of different fundraisers, a couple of things on the types and thinking about, right? Not everyone's going to be right for every setting. Time and effort can differ between what you're doing, right? And also, I will tell you, the cost of the fundraiser and the amount of the money you can actually raise don't always balance. And by that, I mean, there are sometimes you're doing fundraisers that just barely break even. And again, we're going to talk about, to start with donations, and Parakash, I'll get to yours and your particular question. We'll get to selling things, we'll get to events, and we'll get to, oops, shoot, I got a typo. I'll have to fix that. We'll get to raffles. Sorry about that glaring error, everybody. All right. So when we talk about donations, I think donations are kind of the simplest type of fundraiser, just because it's an ask. It's either an ask for money or it's an ask for stuff. They become challenging though, because you got to figure out how to make the ask. You got to decide what makes sense. So in Parakash's question, he said one of the things is, do I need to specify the range of money? Yeah, honestly, I think there's a couple of ways when you're working on a corporate donation or when you're working on donations, particularly when it's bigger organizations, right? There's going to be a slight difference between individuals, small companies, local institutions, and bigger things like an auto company, a foundation, a grant-making organization like the government, or again, foundations, that kind of thing. For the bigger grant or the bigger donations, you're going to need to have a couple of conversations, and you're going to need to listen and understand kind of what they're interested in doing. But you should go in with a range in mind, that what you're looking for. And you should balance your range, right, based on the impact that it's going to make. Because that's what the donor is going to look for in a lot of times, right? They're going to want to see that the money they're going to put out towards an organization, right, is going to produce an impact. So asking for $1 million to impact 25 kids, right, the balance isn't there, right? So you got to kind of think that through. The other problem with donations, right, there's a lot of work involved. You got to craft the letters, you got to do follow-up, you got to, as I said, there can be multiple meetings, and then figuring out who to ask. And Parakash brings this up in his as well about, I'm going to just hit this answer live, right? Do you reach out to HR or finance team, right? How do you make a connection? And I'm assuming when you say auto company, we're not talking about Tom Brady Ford, right? It's not necessarily an auto dealer, right? We're talking like GM, Ford, Rivian, a bigger company. I don't think HR is the right guys at all, right? What you want to do if you're looking for a big company, corporate responsibility, community relations. If it's a particular plant, the plant manager. If it's a union shop, maybe you can go to the union steward or the union organization. I think all of those are better people in finding out who to ask. When you're thinking little stuff, right? You want to go to the owner. The high school kid working the cash register at the McDonald's isn't really going to know anything about donations. Heck, the shift manager might not even know anything about whether or not that store would be willing to do donations, right? So you're going to want to look for the general manager, the regional manager, the owner, are all different people to ask, right? So I think, and the other thing you can do with a big company in terms of figuring out who to ask is if you can find somebody to work there, they may be able to make the connection, or they may be able to make the ask for you, right? Because there's a lot of companies, and there's a great example of this here in kind of Science Olympiad history, right? Where a bunch of employees at a Hewlett Packard operation in, I believe it was Oregon, got involved with their children's Science Olympiad team. And because they were making donations themselves to the Science Olympiad team, it turns out Hewlett Packard has a corporate donor program. So you can make a request they could make a request to the organization to say, hey, we donated, $5,000 to West Middle School Science Olympiad. And what ended up happening was HP's kind of protocols for that is they will match the employee donations up to a particular dollar amount. So all the employees gave $5,000, and then it turns out their employer, Hewlett Packard, gave another $5,000. So that's the big trick here, is figuring out who is the right person to ask. And in this particular case with the auto company, corporate relations, plant manager, union, right? Or an employee would be all the people I'd go for. And yes, definitely plan on thinking about money and having kind of an idea what you want in mind. But back to donations, I think a lot of times they can often be the least effective. You're going to put a lot of work in a lot of times for a small return, especially if you're dealing locally. But the other thing is there can be big expectations set around donations, right? You see the massive, going to stick with the auto plant. So Chevy's got a massive operation. We all know General Motors is a huge financial concern, right? They have a ton of money as a corporation. They do very well. So you think, okay, they're going to be willing. We've got this natural alignment to STEM. That may not be what they're thinking. You have big buildup. The other problem with donations is particularly corporate and grants. The process can take a long time. We're talking multiple meetings. We're talking on grants. It can be a lot of work to put the grant application together and sit and wait and kind of hear what might be happening. In terms of the who and like where can you find donations? Friends and family. Or particularly friends and family that can connect you to their companies, maybe, is always a huge one. Stores and corporations, grants and foundations. And what are you going to get out of it? It's money and materials. And how do you go about it? You can do letter writing, you can do emails, you can try in-person communications, web and social media. The other great one for you, and depending upon how much you want to raise, I'd almost argue the time you're going to spend trying to chase a big corporation like an auto manufacturer, your time would be better spent putting together some donors choose solutions and going donors choose on the website. Might be an easier way to try and tackle some of that. But you can use web and social media to let people know what's going on. Now, there is, having said that, I do think there is an interesting opportunity here when it comes to donations. And this is an opportunity that I have been lucky enough to use occasionally. All right. I point out a couple of big and I call them local corporations, right? So these are big kind of national chains that have stores in communities. Almost all of them, Walmart or Sam's Club, Target, Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards, almost all of them have some element as part of their corporate mandate, right, to help and donate in the community. And that doesn't necessarily mean 100% the town that the store is located in. So they tend to think of their community, right, as a much bigger area, right? Now, saying that, if there's a Walmart in Crystal Lake, I shouldn't hit them up for a donation and then drive 20 minutes to the Walmart in Woodstock, and these are towns where I grew up, and then ask the Walmart in Woodstock to make a donation for my program that's running in Crystal Lake, right? So you gotta, really, you can go to multiple stores, but you can't be like in a town with the store, if that makes sense. But the cool thing about it is when you research what they can give. Some of them, right, will give you, they can make cash donations. Others, right, and honestly, this is where you can use it if you're smart. If they're hesitant to give you a cash donation, right, ask them for, okay, could I get a gift card? Could I get a store credit? Could I get something from the store, right, where you take product off the shelf? And here's why I think this works out for you. If they say, yeah, I can give you some product, right? Well, you might be able to find build materials. So, guarantee you Home Depot, Lowe's, and Menards have PVC and the things you're going to need to build for air trajectory, or they're going to have the kind of lumber and materials you can use to build your launcher for Scrambler, let's say. They're going to have some materials and parts and pieces that you can use for Mission Possible, right? So, okay, yes, you're not getting cash, and yes, you have to use this, you're kind of stuck with the stuff they have, but that works out. I mean, even Target, right? Walmart, Sam's, they have some of that stuff too that may help you. The other thing is, maybe, hey, you use it and it's snacks for your team. It's a reward for the kids to come to practice. It's the stuff you take on the tournament bus or you have in your homeroom at tournament, right? The other thing you can do, right, if they give you these options, right, and they say, no, we can give you merchandise, right, or we can give you a store credit. All right, then grab things that you can sell. So, and we'll talk more about this under selling things, right? So grab candy and soda. And then, all right, great. I got my candy and soda I got for free. Now we're going to turn around and we're going to sell some of this, right, to help raise our money. Last but not least, it could also turn into raffle items. You can get big ticket things potentially, or little ticket things that you can use in raffles and other kind of fundraising strategies. All right. Donations. Any quick questions, or we good moving on to the next one? Or any long questions? Hopefully what I shared makes sense, and I'm more than happy to dig more into donations if that's really the topic that people are interested in. All right. So now we're going to jump to selling things. And I think selling things is sort of the big bucket I'm using for a whole bunch of common, like, it's a common fundraiser, right? Valerie, I see your question. We'll pick it up here at the next stop, if that's all right. with regard to selling things, right? Like I said, it's a common fundraiser, and it doesn't necessarily mean you selling, right? And I'll talk about that in a second. But if you're going to do it, right, some things to think about. If you plan to sell it, if you plan to sell at a school, right? So this is the kids are going to sell candy bars during school. They're going to sell soda, any of that kind of stuff. Do the schools have rules around it, right? Are there things you can't sell? Are there times you can't sell? Make sure you understand kind of those rules and those things. When you're selling, you got to think about inventory management, right? Because it's great to sell stuff, but you got to have the inventory. And because a lot of times what we're talking about selling are going to be food items, they tend to be perishable. So how long can I keep my inventory? How long do I have to move it? If I guess wrong and now I thought I'd be able to sell 1,000 bags of Frito-Lay chips at lunch, right? And they're not selling like I thought. What do I do with all the extra bags I got sitting? What do I do with the stuff? I mean, the chip thing's a great one. What do I do with the stuff that nobody wants, right? What if nobody in my school likes Funyuns? What if nobody in the school likes the flavored Fritos, right? So you got to think about what you're going to have available and how you're going to handle them. Again, food items, you got to worry about eating the profits. Okay. The work on selling can be labor intensive, right? And the percent of money you raise for the sale can get somewhat tricky. Your margins can be tight here, though there are a couple of good ones. So I've talked about food and soda is a creative thing to sell, right? Selling snacks, candy, that kind of stuff. Always, I think, captures an audience with the kids. The other thing you can think about is you can sell things. So, and I have things kind of in quotes because one of the favorite things that happens at my boys' school, and probably one of their best fundraisers that seems to happen all the time, is they have to wear uniforms. So they've gotten the school administration to agree to do fundraisers, and they're allowed to sell dress down days. So the kids come in, they drop off some cash, and everyone can be out of uniform that day, right? Maybe you can work with the school and it's sell other creative things, right? Maybe you get a teacher and says, "Hey, science department agrees because it's helping the Science Olympiad team. We're going to sell homework passes, and you're allowed to buy one homework pass a quarter or something like that you can use on a certain assignment." Right? So you can get creative. The other thing that's here, and I lumped it in because I love this concept, and I didn't really wasn't sure where to put it. So I kind of put it here with selling things. But the other thing, and this kind of gets into Valerie's question here about what's the format to write to a local business, right? In terms of fundraising, are this idea of eat and earns. And what an eat and earn is you go to a particular restaurant in your town. And more often than not, we're talking chain restaurants, Raising Cane's, Culver's, McDonald's, Chili's, Applebee's, Olive Garden, these kind of, pizza places will do it too, like, Domino's or Giordano's. And the idea is you pick a night with the restaurant that is typically a slow night, and people that show up and say they're with your group, you get a portion of their ticket sale. So if I take my family out to Culver's, and right now we're running with my boys and everything, we probably run close to $60 between the three of us in hamburgers and milkshakes and, French fries and all that kind of stuff. Typically what the Culver's does is they'll give you 20% of your sale. So I spent $60. Well, that gets $12 gets of that 60 gets donated to the St. Rita Science Olympiad Club. Right. And now different restaurants will have different ratios as to what you have to spend and, how much they return. But it's kind of a set selling. You don't have to, you're not necessarily selling, but you do have to get the people there. And again, who are we talking about? Friends and family, classmates, neighbors. And then particularly when are you selling? Well, you do before and after school. You can sell on lunch periods. You can sell stuff over social media and the web. You can also make special events. And before we get into a specific example of selling stuff, I want to talk about Valerie's question. Is there a specific format to write to local business to ask for items for fundraising? I don't know if there's the particular format, right? Though I will tell you, you can definitely find examples online. And this is also a place where I have in the past started to use AI prompts or AI like ChatGPT to help craft the letters. But what I've seen and what I've always tried to put in my letters are one, you want to make sure that if at all possible, talk about the connection between the local business and the group. So when I do stuff for the Southside Irish Parade, which is a community event, we have one of the things is it's a parade in March. We'll talk about the number of people we draw in to the neighborhood over parade weekend, right? So we can talk about, that there's potentially 30,000 new customers show up to the neighborhood. If you have data that can talk about like how much money is raised or how much money is spent by an organization, that kind of stuff is always great. If you can talk about a connection, maybe someone associated with the local business was a school graduate, has children at the school, heck, maybe even participated in Science Olympiad, right? So some paragraph that talks about connection, whether it's kind of monetary, whether it's personal, it could be about values. Hey, you're all about, we hear you and your ads talk about, hard work, family business, that's what we believe in here at those are the same values we hold as the Marathon Science Olympiad Club, right? We're all about working hard and kind of learning from our mistakes, those kind of things. So include that. Then you want to be specific about your ask. And I always like to frame it as giving them an option of, hey, would you prefer, like we're looking for donations of both, money or, materials, right? And so kind of give them, who you're asking, right? So I wouldn't necessarily say, I'm asking the local hamburger stand, you wouldn't put materials. That's probably a monetary donation, right? Or you could ask for gift cards to be used as part of a raffle prize, or to gift cards to be in a raffle, that kind of thing. And then I think the other thing you're going to want to do is make sure you give them information about who to reach out if they have any questions. And I typically do 3 approaches with this when I've been going to a local business. So if you do the letter goes in first. give it about, because you're mailing them local and they're local letters, they should probably get there within a week. At about the 2-week mark, stop in, drop a copy of the letter off, right? Give it 2 more weeks, then drop in for a follow-up. Would be sort of my cadence on trying to do that, right? And say, hey, just want to follow up. No, I dropped a letter off to you, right? And when you go in, it's like, hey, I sent you a letter a couple of weeks ago, but just in case, it didn't get through the mail or kind of got lost and everything, want to drop another one off, and would love to follow up and find a time to talk and answer any questions, or to see what might be possible. But I think that's how I would tackle this idea of answering a letter, or kind of things I'd have in my letter to somebody. And like I said, go ahead. I mean, you can give AI, use an AI prompt, give them information and say, hey, I need a letter for this kind of local business looking for this dollar amount, or, being willing to accept money or, items for raffles. And then you're going to have to do some cleaning up because it is AI written. But the beauty is there's a lot of those floating around out there. So I think you can see, and it can help speed up the process a little bit for you. Now, my example for selling, and I got to tell you, and if you didn't catch it on the last slide, I really don't like selling. The selling thing drives me nuts. And I think it's in part because it seems like we're always doing it with my boys. We're always selling something for a team. We're always selling something for school. But the greatest selling thing I've ever come across is Double Good popcorn. And I only know about Double Good popcorn because they approached us and they're one of our partners here, right? And they're really our fundraising partner. And what you do with Double Good is you're going to be selling custom gourmet popcorn. So Double Good has a variety of flavors, variety of sizes, right? Variety of packaging that you can send. It's all made fresh. And it's shipped directly to the purchaser. So you, as the person running the fundraiser, you don't have to touch any product. This is not Girl Scout cookies where you're selling the cookies and then you got to figure out, how do I get the cookies to all the people, and do I have the right cookies, and do I have enough, and did I grab the right kind of bag? All that stuff is cut out. All you do is really 2 things, right? You create an online store using the Double Good app, right? You only need to create 1 store for your team. You then share that store, the link, out to everybody on your team, as well as them sharing it out to their parents, right? And then you put it out on social media. You send it in text messages. You drop it in Instagram. You make Facebook posts. And you have 4 days, a 4-day window to sell your popcorn over social media. You don't have to talk to anybody. All you need to do is push it out on social media. And I will tell you, I know of this because when Double Good comes on board, one of the things they'll do with you is every year they're making new flavors and making changes every summer to their operation. And they want to test all their improvements. They want to test these things out. So they asked Science Olympiad, would we be interested in being part of their summer tests so we could see how this works out? And for the guy that has next to no social media presence, hates selling, right? In 4 days, I sold almost $1,500 worth of popcorn, right? And like, again, no social media presence, no big following. All I am is, I'm out there on Facebook, but that's it, right? And the cool thing about it is Double Good's rate of return is awesome because it's at 50%. So my $1,500 in sales raised $750 for Science Olympiad. And the beauty is all the people selling in the store, we have to worry about each getting a check and then getting that check turned in, or, we pay for it, then we pay somebody else. Double Good collects all the money, they collect everything, and they send the check to the organization with the total amount raised. It is if you're going to sell stuff, it is honestly the greatest sales experience I have ever found, with an awesome rate of return. And the beauty is, the other nice thing about it is, because the popcorn is made fresh, it's actually a good product. It's actually decent food to sell. All right. Questions on this? And I know I'm going long here. So if you have to jump off, I will stay to finish the presentation. Feel free if you want to drop off. You're going to get the recordings, and you'll be able to follow up and hear what we talk about. So, and I will try and speed it up here maybe a little bit. All right. So events are awesome, right? They raise awareness about you. You have a ton of different options. Dinners, you can do bowling outings, you can golf outings, invitational tournaments, you can do camps for kids. The problem is, events can also be a huge, huge, huge challenge, right? So you need to be smart about it. They're going to demand your time. So that's going to take away from doing things around the Science Olympiad team. A lot of the expenses on events are up front. So you're paying for things, hoping to make yourself whole on the back end. Events also can have a ton of hidden costs, right? And I already talked about how they're labor intensive. So because they're labor intensive, you want to try and use a committee, and that's going to distribute the work and the various tasks to people. Though I will tell you, as the organizer, using the committees, right, can also up your workload and your stress, because now you're managing people on a project, right? One of the ways that events can be successful, right? Use the event for other fundraising, donations, sponsors. So it's going to shock you if you've ever, depending upon your Facebook feed and who you engage with and stuff. I'm in a community where it seems like every time I turn around, there's a golf outing fundraiser. Almost all golf outings only make money on their sponsorships and side activities at the golf outing. So they're selling hole sponsors, they're selling lunch sponsors, they're selling sponsorships and essentially collecting donations, right? And then they're running a ton of raffles, right? You're not making money on the individuals attending. You're hoping to break even on the cost of individuals. And then the other thing you talk about is sales, right? So back to, hey, an event. Maybe you can run the concession stand at a sporting event for your school and split the profits while you're manning the concession stand. Or maybe you have an event and you can sell stuff along the way. It could be additional things. It could be merchandise. Kind of the world's your oyster on selling. And again, you're going after the same people. Friends and family, community, people with common interests. And this is where I think if you can get creative with your event, you can draw in some interesting people and you can get a lot of stuff. So like trivia nights, movie marathons, like interesting things might be able to, is the key to trying to draw people into an event. Now, I want to talk about probably one of the biggest things that Science Olympiad tournaments do, or Science Olympiad teams do, are invitational tournaments. It's a practice tournament, right? If you've ever gone to one, you can always run one for your school. It's typically got to be on a Saturday, right? The beauty here is you can tweak it and adjust the events. So there are invitationals that don't necessarily do all 23 events. There are invitationals that don't do middle school and high school. They tailor themselves to one group or the other. Problem is you got to find the space, you got to find event supervisors, and you're going to need the equipment and the materials. Before you go down the road of your invitational, you got to have a really great understanding of your budget. So what is it going to cost for medals and trophies? What it's going to cost in equipment and materials? What are you doing for the event supervisors? Hey, what's the cost? Am I getting charged for space rental? I just talked with a coach today, and she shared with how they have to actually rent space at their school to practice, right? So you're going to have to rent space on a Saturday. What's it going to cost you to clean the space up, right? Do you have to pay overtime for the building engineer? Do you have to pay overtime for the janitors to be there? Then the other thing to think about is, right, what format do you want it, right? Do you want it in person or do you want satellite? There's pros and cons to both. Are there going to be other things going on, right? So are you going to tie in a workshop? So I will tell you there's one coming up in 2 weeks in Indiana, an invitational, and now I'm blanking. Oh, I believe it's the Northridge, is the school. Northridge Invitational in Indiana. On Friday, they're doing workshops. Then the tournament's on Saturday, right? Do you want to tie into that? Is that something to draw people in? Or is that something additional you're going to charge for? Are you going to include breakfast and lunch or snacks? Or is that going to be something you're going to charge for? Is that a revenue opportunity? Same thing with raffles, same thing with swag. Again, it's who's your audience? You're looking for Science Olympiad teams, right? And depending upon how you go about it, if you do a satellite tournament, right, you can draw from a wide range of people, right? A lot of teams will be willing to do satellite tournaments because all they have to do is go to their school. If you insist on in person, all right, depending upon your location, you may have a little bit tougher time getting people, right? Also, think about who else is competing. I know a lot of schools and a lot of people love to try and do stuff on the Martin Luther King Jr. weekend in January, right? That Saturday is really popular, but that's also when like Harvard and MIT are running their invitations. There's a Southern California invitational that weekend this year. So there's a lot of, you can then, you got to think about when you're going to go, right? Because you want to make sure you can actually draw an audience for that. All right. Then you got to get your approvals. So first you start with your school, and your school's cool with it. You go to your state director. State director's cool with it. You come to the national office. We sign off on it. We make sure you get your insurance so everybody's safe and you're covered. And then it's just about building your audience. Michelle asked in the chat if there are other fundraising partners like Double Good. No, Double Good is our fundraising partner. They're kind of the people we've decided to work with. But there's other people out there, right? I've known, we've sold pizza setups. I've sold wrapping paper. Wrapping paper is horrible. Candles are horrible. What else is out there that we've had to sell? Christmas wreaths. We've sold luminaries for Christmas. Like there's a bunch of different stuff out there. But like I said, I really like the Double Good one. And again, they're great people to work with, and they're a Science Olympiad partner. All right. I'm going to skip it in. So if you have questions, go ahead and type them into the Q&A. I want to get to raffles, and then we're going to pause and I can tackle some questions, right? So all you're doing in a raffle is you're selling chances to win something, right? You got a wide range of how to do this, wide range of stuff to sell, right? As well as a wide range to do the raffle. You can be in person, you can be online. The raffle could be for money. The raffle could be for stuff. They're moderate work because you got to sell the tickets, right? The only way a raffle works is you got to sell, right? Again, a lot of times your costs are up front, right? But the beauty is so depending upon how you're doing the raffle, right? You may have to go buy stuff. But the nice thing is there's often not really hidden costs in a raffle. And as we've talked about, you can sometimes get prizes through donations. And again, when we talk about you have to figure out how you're going to want to pull the winner, right? So do you do it in person or online? Is it in conjunction with an event, or is it just, hey, here I'm online, we're going to pull the winner? It's the usual suspects on who we're selling through or selling to, but in terms to watch out for, make sure you understand the rules, right? There are regulations governing raffles in states, and you want to make sure you don't run afoul of them. If you're doing it through the school may have regulations on what can be raffled off or how you go about it. The other big thing, especially if you're doing stuff online, right? Pay attention to fairness, right? You got to make sure you're watching and making sure that everybody feels it's fair. Everybody thinks we're transparent. You got to watch out for that, especially as you get into more expensive tickets, more big, more. I don't want to say bigger prizes, but like more expensive prizes, bigger dollar amounts for prize, right? Then the other thing you want to pay attention to is watch out for this issue, and you got to make some decisions around cash equivalent. So one of the things we will always raffle off is this past year for the parade I helped on, we raffled off a trip for 4 to London for the Bears game, right? And you got tickets, we got your hotel, we got your airline tickets. There have been, but we also had to set up, okay, here's the and specify this is what the cash equivalent is going to be, because the downside is all those items we got donated through people to cover the cost. But if somebody doesn't want to go, or they can't go because they can't get a passport in time to travel, right? Rules say, or at least the rules around us say, you got to offer a cash equivalent. So make sure you know what you're up for. Also, make sure appropriateness. It's one thing for the American Legion, the VFW, a sporting club, to raffle off a gun, right? Like a hunting rifle or a shotgun, or that kind of thing. That may not work for schools, right? That may not work for an audience. If you're really, okay, we're selling raffle tickets to the kids for something that would interest the kids, but then we're going to do the drawing at a bar in town. Again, you got to mix and match and set up your kind of appropriateness on things. All right. Real quick, Jennifer asked about, is there a national SO double good account we need to tap into? Nope, there is nothing from nationals. It is all between you and Double Good. You just download their app from either the App Store or Google Play, and you can get started with them setting up your event. All right. Now, I said you can raffle off a ton of stuff, and you absolutely can. This one, I want to share with you probably one of the coolest raffles that I've seen. And again, back to one of the strategies here with all of this is trying to be unique and trying to capture people's attention. I want to talk to you about a Queen of Hearts raffle. And what a Queen of Hearts is at its essence, it's a progressive split the pot. And what that means is, for a split the pot, the raffle, in a split the pot raffle, you're going to sell raffle tickets. How many raffle tickets are sold, whatever that dollar value is collected from the sale, is split in half. Half of it stays with the organization that ran the raffle. The other half of it goes to the person who won, right? The winning ticket. It's progressive because there's a very particular outcome that has to happen. And if that outcome doesn't happen when you do your first drawing, all the money that's in the pot rolls over to the next time, right? And rolls over and rolls over and rolls over. And the first time I ever experienced this, right, was done by a school in my neighborhood. They actually ran into a situation where they were about to collect too much money and have a prize pot or a prize pool that violated state law here in Illinois for the size of the prize pool. Their final pot for their Queen of Hearts raffle was $4 million. $2 million went to the school, $2 million went to the winner. And they did it by selling 6 tickets for $5 a piece. And what happens is the purchasers, on the ticket, they write their name, their phone number, and they put a number 1 to 54. They throw them to the raffle draw. What you do as the person, and now you can buy boards for this, you can find them online, you can make it yourself. Get a standard poster board. On your standard size poster board, right, you do 54 boxes, right, about the size of a playing card. You number them 1 to 54. You then take a standard 54 card deck, right? I'd recommend you get a new deck, you shuffle it up, right? Make sure all the cards are there. You include both jokers. You then deal the cards face down on the poster board so that there's a card covering every space and nobody has ever seen what the cards are. If for any reason you end up flipping a card, you got to wipe the board, start all over, deal them back out, right? Nobody should see what's in each space. Then you tape them down so you can't see them, you can't turn them over, right? I've even seen places where they tape them down, then they run that entire thing through a laminator so that everything is sealed on there. Now, what happens is you pick a time and a place, you draw 1 ticket per week. So I come out, John Loehr, number 23. Right? They go ahead, they get a knife, they cut open space 23, they flip the card over, right? We're looking for the Queen of Hearts. If you don't see the Queen of Hearts, we do it all over again the following week. And you keep going and keep going and keep going. And now, because there's a danger in this thing going really long and people kind of getting frustrated and not seeing any money, right? You can't offer other payouts. So I've seen places do it. Well, hey, if you get an ace, right? If you get a queen that's not the Queen of Hearts, right? You get money. They've done it where somebody said that if you get the Joker, right, you reset the board. So let's say you find the Joker and at this point in time, there's 20 cards remaining, right? What you would then do is you cut all of them out, get a new board, you shuffle those 20 up, you deal those 20 back out, right, to the spaces that haven't been picked yet, right? You reseal the board and you start over. The cool thing about finding a host site is you make the drawing an event. So you get more people in. And if you get more people in, they're going to buy more tickets, right? And it's good for the host because you pick a night or pick a time when the business is slow. So at a restaurant, at a bar, I've seen schools do them at these kind of raffles at sporting events, right? So we're always going to pull the raffle ticket at halftime. If you've been to almost any kind of baseball game lately, and I even think basketball, like they're doing split the pots. And you can, after in the 8th inning, they're going to pull the raffle ticket and you get your ticket number. And what you need the playing cards and you need a roll of those 2-sided raffle tickets. The side that says ticket, they put their name, phone number, and a number 1 to 54 in, right? And then you go ahead and they keep the other half so they can come up. They can show you that it's It's them, plus they can show you their driver's license and their ID. But it's probably one of the cooler raffles I've seen and one of the more unique ones lately. All right, we've kind of reached the point. Any questions? I see nothing in the chat. I got nothing in the Q&A. All right, well, you think I'm going to put in a plug for upcoming webinars. I got 3 more this month. Next week is a very student-focused one, and coaches too, probably, about disease detectives and how outbreak investigations work. And you can get your questions answered about the event and about outbreak investigations. Then on the 19th, for students, event supervisors, tournament folks, we're doing a session on a new event we've been working on, engineering CAD, right? And we'd encourage you we want you to come and you can find out how to run it if you're an event supervisor. And as a student, how do you compete in it and kind of why it matters? And then the next night, we're following that one up with what I think is a fantastic presentation from the director admissions at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, right? Dr. Jeffrey Beavers, right? And he's going to talk about what is engineering. And it's going to be not only engineering careers and where you can go if you have an interest in engineering, but also he's going to talk about like different ways engineers are taught. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm not an engineer by background. I was a student in the hard sciences, knew nothing about engineering until my oldest decided he wanted to be a civil engineer. And we started looking at colleges and just visiting a whole bunch of different engineering programs. And let me tell you, it's not like what I experienced for my bachelor's of science degree. So I definitely would encourage anybody who is interested in the topic, have kids interested in engineering, your build kids, any of your designers. I think that would be a fantastic one. If you want to know more about the webinars we're doing in December, January, February, and for the rest of the year, you can follow us at Science Olympiad Official on Instagram. All right, so in conclusion, hey, fundraising can be effective, right? There's a bunch of different options. I would encourage you, as you get into it, make sure you understand the rules, the goals, and the costs, right? Because those things are there. And the biggest thing, right? And this is and I'll tell you from having lived it myself, balance the work versus the money raised. Nothing stinks more than putting all your time and effort and blood and sweat and tears into putting on a fundraiser, right? And you break even. You barely clear your target, right? It can be a disheartening experience, right? And then, like I said, be unique. Queen of Hearts, come up with creative things to do for events. Come up with creative things to sell, right? You need to break through the noise. You need to get people interested and excited. So I would encourage you to be unique. All right. Thank you all for hanging out to the end. I appreciate it. Like I said, we'll get this information out to you. I hope you have a wonderful night. And as always, I'm really looking forward to running into you at a tournament or another Science Olympiad event this season. So I wish you all the best.